Welcome back to another episode of Just
Just
a
a
Squirrel
squirrel
Looking
looking
for a
for
Nut,
a nut,
trying to
trying
get out
to
of
get this
this
rut.
rut. Not bad.
That that was 100% on me, my fault.
I always appreciate these times because they clearly show that just the most authentic side of people, but it's fascinating to do with people who also haven't uh, done it. So like some of the other guests that we'll have on, and they'll literally either just read the whole thing and then they'll just stop at the end and wait for for us to finish whatever we're doing, or they just refuse to even attempt it. So
I think I said just a squirrel looking for a nut, trying this rut.
yeah, yeah. There you go. It still somehow makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I'm glad we're able to connect. I know that Scott Mason is going to be missing this conversation to begin with for sure, but I know that this is an interesting topic for me. The question of are you afraid of authenticity? Because I've been curious in the last couple weeks to couple months, maybe even couple years, whether or not it's even possible to live your full authentic self. uh, I know at times, myself included, I don't know how it is for you, Bodhi, but there are times where I show elements of myself, but then there are also elements of myself that I don't choose to show. And I don't know if it's because that's just what I've been conditioned to think. I mean, I just think about how often do we show the times where certain things are not working out, right? Or not going according to the plan. Like, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you planning an event a little while ago, like a symposium?
Yeah, I've actually got one coming up and did one
Yeah.
last year. So
So I'm doing the same thing right now as far as putting an event for Overcoming Odds in September. And, as part of that journey, I just realized that there are going to be things that don't work according to the plan.
yeah,
Speakers are going to may cancel last minute. Hotels might fall through, airplane or flights get delayed. So all these things. And so I wonder, what is the ultimate shame around that? Why do we not show those moments?
I think it's vulnerability. We're afraid of being vulnerable. We're afraid of uh, how people are going to perceive us, and I think it goes back to yeah, before I even get into that, yeah, I love this topic because there's so many different directions we could go
Yeah.
with this. But for me, I was like, where does it start? Like where do we start to kind of lose ourselves, our innocence? And I think for me, it's you go back to grade school, and
Mm,
what happens? You raise your hand, and first time you raise your hand, and you get told it's the wrong answer, and people kind of laugh at you, or the teacher makes a comment, and then from second, third grade, all of a sudden we're I don't want to speak up, I don't want to say nothing, I got to fit in with this group, I want this girl to like me, I want this.
yeah.
So we start to get away from our authentic selves, and it's something I think that kind of uh, you know uh, grows and grows the more and more the older we get, and a lot of that stuff tends to get filed in our memory, and subconsciously we're almost conditioned to be more uh, you know unauthentic than we are our true selves, if we even know our true selves, which I think is
Yeah.
like a whole other thing to talk about.
I also wonder to what degree when it comes to this, and you and I were talking about this right before we hit record. One of the things that I've been doing is actively researching different people who are in the similar
Mhm.
spaces of storytelling, YouTubers and podcasters. And I was telling you how even with the structure that we have, I got to a point where I feel like there has to be a next layer. There
Yeah.
has to be some sort of next step other than the pre-existing one. And I was thinking about it. Why have I not pulled the trigger before? I mean, maybe it's because I haven't had the idea, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it's because I haven't had the realization until literally now. Because I also think that there is certain things. I don't know if you believe in this or not, but I think certain things come into your life at the right reason and at
Absolutely,
the
I do
right
believe
time,
in that.
right?
Yeah.
Like you could be doing something for 200, 300 episodes or however many hours. And until you meet that one person that just helps you shift your perspective and just gives you that chance to understand that, wow, I could do actually something completely different.
Yeah.
You won't know. And I'm finding it in this case, looking at the different channels and different creators in the space, how much I actually crave going slightly different direction.
Yeah.
And with that, it's going to be probably a new level of authenticity and a new level of risk. And I wonder, that's the other component that I think you mentioned, is risk.
Mhm.
But I think the only way to do it is you just have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
no way to prepare yourself for an authentic self. Is there? I don't think there is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's risk, openness. It's that fear of failure, fear of being hurt, and I think that's why a lot of people hide from just being totally authentic. When I started my podcast, I could have talked about leadership concepts. I could have talked about books. I could have talked about anything, and it really wouldn't have been. It's that authentic piece that you were talking about with yours. You
Mm,
said you're going to come out with something that's going to be authentic. The reason Scott Mason's podcasts are so great is because Scott is authentic. The reason yours have
mm,
been so successful, 300 and some episodes, is because
mm,
it's that piece of authenticity that comes along with it. And that's, with mine too. I mean, all of our guests are authentic. If I've recorded with someone and I'm like, that came off a little too canned, too staged. If it's not authentic, it doesn't make the air. But it's but we have little pieces of our true selves that kind of define what we're doing. So yeah, you're talking about putting as we were saying, like a fresh coat of paint on uh, the podcast, but it's going to be something that'll be authentic to you, something that's you're not putting on a facade.
What do you do in situations when the episodes aren't about to be aired?
Well, I mean, even if I listen to one with me and I'm like, yeah, like why was I acting like that? Why was I? And the thing is, you got to have that. You got to be self-aware,
Mm.
and you may not necessarily catch it in the moment, but if has anyone ever told you, oh, like like, hey, oh, like you said such and such, or you did this, and you're like, what? That doesn't sound like me. I wouldn't do that. But
Mhm.
sometimes I think that's the beauty of doing our podcast like we do, is you can go back and listen to it, and you're like, oh, why did I laugh like that? That laugh wasn't authentic. Why did I like respond like I did? That was so fake. And
Just go back in the editing, just mute yourself
oh,
out.
now majority of those don't make the air thanks to Audacity and all these things. But yeah, but that's the thing. You hear it, and if you have that self-awareness, and especially if you can catch it, you're like, oh my gosh, what was I doing?
Mm.
And I think that's a gift to have that, and to be able to admit it, to be able to like to sit here and talk about it. A lot of people don't. They like to hide that. Look at social media, for example. what
Yeah,
what percentage of social media do you think is truly authentic?
that's a good question. Probably, I don't know, but it's probably very, very small number.
Especially Instagram.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with, well, probably how the platform is built to begin with, right? The
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's instant and it's supposed to catch your attention. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this also the other day. I mean, if we were to put the stories of the times where things didn't work out, whether it was with the podcast or planning out an event and whatever it be, would that really catch the person's attention?
Yeah. Or we take it down.
Or yeah, that's
You
true.
take it down. Um, I don't know if you've connected with Noble Gibbons, but I was talking to my wife about it this morning when I knew this was the topic we were going to be
Mm,
discussing. And to me, his vulnerability makes him perhaps one of the most authentic people I know. And he goes on Facebook and he's like, hey, for 2021, these are all the great things I accomplished. For 2021, these are all the things I failed miserably at and did not do good at.
mm,
And throws it out there. And that list to me stood out more than the things he did great at.
mhm.
And people were commending him for it, which is crazy because if you think about society, we live the complete opposite. We live to cover that stuff and get applauded for the things we did great on, but people were commending him for the things that he was open and honest and said, I failed and I did not succeed at this. And, this was miserable. This was a horrible time in my life. And by admitting that and showing that openness, people were applauding them for it, including myself. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I should do that. That's actually a really good idea." Um, so yeah, I appreciate that level of authenticity that someone is willing to show.
Do you think a part of that has to do with the fact that a lot of people want to show those versions of themselves and for whatever reason just aren't able to or not wanting to? So that's why they're able to relate so much to messages like his?
Um, yeah, it's almost like living vicariously through somebody. I think they see his message and I think they're like, wow, I wish I could do that. But
Yeah,
even myself, and I think when it comes to self awareness, I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And that's not like a cocky comment. That's something that 4 years ago I really struggled with, but I feel like I'm getting a lot better at it now. But even when I read it, and I was like, that's a really good idea. I should do that. I didn't do
yeah,
it, and I don't know how many people probably applauded him and were like, kudos for doing that, but they didn't do the same thing. Or this is
yeah.
a great idea. Um,
I
but it, go ahead.
I was gonna say I found that to be true for my journey, like having traveled for however many months by now, and having had the ability to even share as many of the moments as I can. I've realized how important it was, not only for myself, but I think for other people who might have been looking for an outlet or a
Hmm.
space to process their own experiences. Because I mean, let's face it, I don't know what your journey has been like, but my journey has definitely taught me this. I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to live a quote unquote authentic life. It
Hmm.
takes a lot of courage to do these things live in front of however many people
Yeah.
and admit the fact that there were times where I didn't know X, Y, and Z. There were times when I did ask random strangers for help. There were times when I failed miserably at certain things in my life. And I'm finding that the only way that I've been able to kind of progress within that authenticity is to just keep going. It's one of those moments where I truly believe you won't know until you try, period. You won't know what your authentic self truly is until you give it a shot, until you put yourself out there in whatever way. Like this is what my experience has taught me to this point. You know, because there are things that I think about, and then I think there's that version of myself that lives in my head. But until I put it out there, it's a completely different version.
Yeah.
And then I'm having a completely different experience.
It's so interesting to me, like the psychology that goes into it, to where if someone were to
Yeah.
come up to you and they were to say, "Oh, look, do you know who you are?" And you're like, we almost get taken back by it. We're like, "Of course I know who I am."
Yeah.
But do we really? Like, if I mean, even for the listeners out there, if you were to sit back and like really ask yourself, not ask your spouse, not ask anybody else, but like ask yourself, like, who are you? How well would you be able to articulate it? And how well would you be able to like, are you those things that you're like, well, I know I like it. Do you like that because you truly like it, or do you like it because someone else likes it, or someone, you want someone to think you like it's just really, so deep, so complex, and you really think about it. Like,
Yeah.
what is our true authentic self?
Well, I also think as part of that, so there's this guy, Lachelle actually introduced me to him. I forgot his name, Daniel. I forgot his last name, but anyways, he used to work with a lot of people around the similar question:
Hmm.
"Who are you?" And I had the pleasure of experiencing this firsthand. This was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was introduced to him, and we spoke for 45 minutes to an hour. And I kid you not, for the entire time, he just asked me the question of "Who are you?" And 4 years later, I'm still remembering that conversation
Yeah.
because A, I've experienced every range of emotion.
Hmm.
I started with giving him simple answer, then I got deeper, then I got deeper, then I hit a wall. So then I had to show it through frustration. Who am I? Like I have no idea why why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
Who are you? Type of thing.
It's hard to be that vulnerable.
So yeah, so I got to that point and I'm realizing how much of an impact that conversation had, and that took place 3 to 4 years ago.
Hmm.
And I think because I was able to create this emotional connection to it, That's one of the reasons why I'm remembering. But you have a really good point, though. I think it's probably one of the most complicated questions to answer, and I don't think there's an ultimate answer to it because it's
No,
probably it. I think the only way I could answer it is who am I in this given moment?
yeah,
Because there's so much of the past that I haven't even processed yet.
yeah. I read something not too long ago. Where it's like, in our life, we the versions of ourselves. We have several versions of ourselves that die throughout the years. You have a traumatic event. That old version of you is gone, and you're now living this new version.
Mm,
And I think through trauma, through heartache, through challenging yourself to do something different, we start to discover things about ourselves along the way. You go through trauma and you survive it, and it's like, wow, I didn't know I had that in me. You test yourself, you get in an uncomfortable situation, and you succeed at something, and you try something new. You adapt a new lifestyle of doing something, and then you
yeah,
surprise yourself. So I don't think we really know who we truly are, our true authentic self. We have a good idea, but I don't think. I mean, I think that's the beauty of life. I think you go through it, and you're discovering all of these new things about you. Honestly, I think it'd be kind of boring if you kind of knew who you were and didn't discover new things and did not have the ability to challenge yourself. I think that's kind of the cool part about it when you really think of it. Is
yeah.
I'm near that halfway point in my life, and I'm learning new things about myself each and every day. But if you were to ask me 10 years ago who I am, it's a lot different answer than it is, April 28th, 2022.
Did you think, not did you think, but did you struggle answering that question when you were younger, like when you were around my age or younger?
Uh, I like how that sounds like I'm way, way older.
Hey, you said near halfway point.
Not quite there. I'm nearing it. For our listeners, I'm still years old right now. But no,
Like, at what point did it make? At what point did your response make sense to you, and you weren't left with a question?
yeah, that is. I mean, that's a really good question. Honestly, probably since I started my podcast, because um, the pandemic. The silver lining in the pandemic is, for a lot of people I've talked to, is that you were able to do some soul searching and try new
Yeah.
things and really discover new things about yourself. And whenever I came out with my podcast, and I know we're plugging them at the end, but it's a little early. But I did episode 3 of my podcast, and I'd always wanted to tell my story to people, and I'd always just been hesitant to do it, a little trepidatious at times. And I would have classes that would come through, and I would tell a class my story every now and then. But for the
Mm,
most part, you had to be like really, really in my inner circle for me to open up and talk to you about it. And I just decided, like, you know what? Let me just put it out there. Let me just let
mhm.
everybody know what I've been through, and the things I've experienced. And I think that moment, and then the people that I've connected with in the podcast world, and through this whole virtual environment. It's funny, Ola, because the people that I've stayed in contact with,
Mhm.
they're the ones that, which is majority of the people on my podcast, but I've stayed in contact with them because of that authenticity. The
Yeah.
ones that, and you probably know what I'm talking about. You meet them, you record with
Mhm.
them, and you're like, all right, I got an episode out of it, but we'll probably never go to Panera together.
Yeah.
Um, it's because you just it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel real, and I think that's when I kind of discovered that about myself was recently. And it brings up a question, that like I said, I was talking about it earlier today, and I'm kind of curious as your take on this. Is someone said, how old are you when you're truly born? When you're, like, really start to live like your
Yeah.
authentic true life. And for me, honestly, mine was probably like 38. I think I was born when I was 38 years old.
Yeah.
I think before that, I'd been almost living other people's lives and being very unauthentic. So I'm kind of curious as like what your take is with that.
For me, I think it was 24,
Yeah,
so about 5 years ago or so. But I also think that there are probably multiple stages of it
yeah,
as far as the rebirth goes, because the person that I was when I was 24, yes, I'm still almost elements of that person today, but I'm drastically different
Yeah.
as far as what I've put myself through, how much I've grown. So I think if anything, in the past 5 years, I don't know how many chapters I've been through, but I've lived through quite a few different chapters that required a rebirth process. It
Hmm.
required me to shed my own self and step into the new one. Right now is a perfect example of it. I didn't, there was a time in my life where I did not believe in the possibility of becoming who I am today or planning all these different things and creating a story. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that narrative was possible. I didn't have other people in front of me who were living in a similar narrative in their lives, which made it that much more challenging to believe in the possibility. So I think if anything, I was born in 24. I like what you said as far as living someone else's opinions and perspectives. It's exactly what I was doing. I was living someone else's life, someone else's dream until I started to realize that I can also live mine.
What was it that changed for you though?
I think for me, what changed, it was coming across Think and Grow Rich.
Mm.
It was coming across that book. And I remember I read it 2 or 3 times, all back to back to back. And I realized in reading it that it's possible to think and grow rich from your thoughts alone. That I don't need a lot of these other things that I was looking for before I
Yeah.
could become who I am. And all of those things were truly a possibility. And in that moment, I remember almost simultaneously, whether it was that day or later that week, came across a speech by Oprah Winfrey, and I came across Tony Robbins' "I'm Not Your Guru," and literally my life changed. And I'll tell you what changed. Obviously, the circumstances didn't change, right?
Right.
I didn't open my bank account and all of a sudden there was $1 million in there.
Yeah.
But what did change is the possibility of what I could become. The version that I was dreaming of myself became a completely different version.
Yeah.
Then I started to believe that I could do a lot of these things. I shied away from them because I wasn't in the right environment. I didn't have the right people supporting me. And I think at the end of the day, I didn't have any self belief. I mean, I had self belief as far as, yeah, I could do the things in front of me, but I didn't have the self belief to do the things that are way, way in front of me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference is when my self belief shifted. Now, it's not to say that I don't experience doubt. I still experience doubt.
That's normal. Yeah.
I still experience fear, but the person that I was 5 years ago is drastically different. So I think if
Hmm.
anything, what changed are my thoughts. Period. The thoughts and how and what I was thinking about myself.
It's almost like I'm turning this now into like the Shadows episode or something. When do you still find yourself like being the most unauthentic with somebody?
So I think once again that has been stages.
Hmm.
The most recent one I could remember is one of the first times I wrote an email to who was it? It was either Oprah Winfrey's agent or Will Smith's, asking them to
Oh,
be on the
geez. That's,
asking
I'm hitting up you and Scott Mason. You're hitting up Oprah and Will Smith.
asking them to be on the podcast, and I think a part of me felt unauthentic because I was so starstruck.
Yeah.
I was so starstruck by writing an email to which I did not get a response
Just nothing.
to. So
I was
that
going to ask you, how did that end up turning out?
there was nothing, crickets. But I will tell you this, that in putting together the event right now in September with people like Les Brown and Shooting for the Stars and going for Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, um, Jamie Foxx, a handful of others, I'm not feeling that starstruck moment anymore.
Yeah.
I think travel for me has had a big difference or has had a major change on me in my
Hmm.
life. It made me realize that a lot of the things that I put on a pedestal as things that are impossible or unattainable are truly the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, let's face it, they're people.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
breathe the same oxygen that we do. They probably breathe the same exact way, maybe with a slight variation, who knows? But they're people. And I think what happened to me is due to the level of their influence, I didn't think they were reachable. And therefore, I started to think that, okay, I can't just present my authentic self because my authentic self is not enough
Yeah.
to be at the same dinner table as any of them. And now I don't believe that. Now I genuinely believe that if you put in the effort and you believe in whatever you choose to believe in order to make that vision possible, I think it's all doable.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate thing for me is like, why not? Going back to authenticity, going back to not choosing to be afraid of my authentic self. Like, why not? So what that I might fail on the way? I already have a couple times. But like that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what's ahead of you until you give it a shot. In my mind, it's this perfect plan, like just do X, Y, and Z, and somehow you're at X number. But the reality, as I'm sure you know, it's drastically different.
Hmm. Yeah. I love the Brene Brown quote about like vulnerability, and it's the last thing I want you to see in me, and it's the first thing I look for in you. And I just love that. And because
Yeah,
it's so true. It's so true. Like we're wanting people to be authentic, but we kind of watch how we are to protect ourselves. And um, even like my job now, I see it on like smaller levels. I'm like you with the starstruck thing. I've kind of gotten over that piece, especially I think the podcast really helped with it. Um,
yeah,
because I can remember meeting somebody and you walk up and it's like, hey, how are you doing?
yeah.
And you walk away like,
Your voice
who the hell
cracks.
were you? Why were you acting like that? They get dressed the same way as you. They just have better clothes, but they're why'd you act like that? And even if I don't know if you notice this about yourself, Oleg, but like you'll pass somebody. You can
Uh-huh.
be in the middle of talking like to me, and we're being really authentic, and then someone else walks by. It can be a superior or anyone. And what do? We turn and look at them, and we're like, "Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you." And no matter what they say, you give that little like, all right, take care. And then you turn back to being yourself. And you really think about it, it's like if you were to stop in that
What did I
moment
just
and
do?
watch yourself, you'd be like, why did I laugh? I don't laugh like that.
Yeah,
Why did I act that way? I don't wave like that.
yeah.
Um, but we have our course that we teach at now, the instructors come through. They've been selected as brand new instructors. They haven't taught before, and they're being evaluated. And they have to teach lessons at school, and then they go back to their school house and they have to teach as well. And the crazy thing is, like they graduate tomorrow, but it's so ironic that you're talking about things meet you just at the right time that this topic came up, because probably the biggest feedback that I give is, who was that up there? Like that was you playing the role of an instructor, but I want you to be you. I want you to be authentic. I want to be like your truth. Otherwise, they're not going to know how to feel about you. This being the students.
No.
Um, I don't like I like the version of you behind your desk better than the version of you up there trying to play the role. You're not good at playing that role. We're not good at playing the role of. I'm not good at playing the role of Oleg. I'm not good at playing the role of a social media influencer, of
Yeah.
appeasing to everybody. I'm only good at being the authentic me. And I think too many times we get like small little doses of our really, really authentic self. But I do, to go back to what you said about the starstruck thing, I've kind of gotten over that too. I remember getting
Yeah.
rejected by someone. I reached out to someone when I started, and I was a little, even my email was not authentic. My email that I sent to them. Um, and I got rejected, and I was like, wow. I mean, what you really think about it, that's where a lot of our, um, mask and facades that
Fears
we
and
put on come
insecurities.
from is from rejection, or I mean, even in relationships. But yeah, when I got rejected by them, and it was like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Good luck with your little podcast. And I was like, oh, wow. But it's no different than when you're young and you ask somebody out and you have feelings, they don't have feelings, and you get rejected, or
Yeah.
you think you have a good answer and you get shot down in class, or you try out for a team and you get cut. And I just think we try to avoid that because it does hurt, and I think we just
Yeah.
try to shy away from it.
Look, and that everything that you just described, that's happened to me at one time or another. I received the emails when I was told that, hey, your X, Y, and Z is not high enough. This is not a good enough opportunity, or this doesn't align with what I want. So I received all the, but I also look at those things as feedback mechanisms.
Hmm.
I think that's the beauty of talk going back to your question, when was I born, and how did I know I was born? I think if anything, I was born around the age of 24. How did I know that I was being born? That's when I realized I had a choice.
Mm.
I had a choice in how I view my past circumstances. I have a choice in how I go through the current ones, and I have a choice in the type of future that I want to build for myself. That for me was probably one of the more important things that I realized along this journey, is the fact that there's always a choice available, regardless of what the circumstances might be. Same exact thing with the emails, right? I'll get a rejection letter from someone saying, I always I always find it fascinating. So I remember I was watching a TED talk with someone. He was talking about the word unfortunately,
Yeah.
and he was making a joke. He was saying, I wish there was a different word for it. And for me, it's a great word because it just shows that, okay, clearly, they're not interested, but why? Give me a hint. Give me some sort of insight. Not so that I'm going to go to the drawing board and improve everything according to what you want me to right now, but it's just so I can learn from it. So the
Hmm.
next email I put together for someone else, I have an idea of what to include. I have an idea of what to revise.
Just
And
put
I think
an extra zero on your listeners.
not like that, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's a certain point where someone had told me this many years ago. He said, in order to be successful in what you do, or in order to be successful in sales, you have to speak the other party's language.
Hmm.
Period. Like when I'm pitching myself to a school or a college or whatever to go speak to them, I'm not going to use terms that they're not going to understand.
Yeah. Know your
So I
audience.
will literally go through their website to find the right vocabulary and then compose an email using those words.
It's smart.
I'm not going to use other terms to describe resilience if resilience is used 99% on their website. Why would I do that? I'm just creating an unnecessary question, or I'm creating a decision for them to churn away because they don't understand. They don't understand what I'm talking about. They don't understand the ask. So I'm realized that after a while, in a way, I have to speak their language, and I
But are
think
you
that's
being
still
your
across the
authentic
board.
you by speaking their language?
I think so, because I'm realizing language is inexact to begin with. So the words that I'm using now, I mean, are they really authentic me, or is that just a bunch of words that I learned from the conversations beforehand,
It's true.
or multiple conversations beforehand? Because that's the other thing. I don't know how it is for you. The longer I've been hanging out with people like Scott Mason and Casey and so many others, my vocabulary has changed
Yeah.
because they use different
Podcast.
words.
Yeah.
They're not going to text me saying, want to do a call. They'll
Yeah.
text me, would you like to do a call, or want to get on the call.
Yeah.
They'll spell it out. My other friends, myself included, I'll just say, want to do a call. I'm not going to spell it out, want to go play basketball, or do you want
Hmm.
to go play basketball? I'm going to spell it out something like want to hoop. That's it. So I think there's a key component to that, learning how to speak someone's language. I think the authenticity component in that is the overarching message that you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
Like if I need help, I'll just blatantly ask, "Hey, can you help in this?"
How do you take feedback? Are you open to feedback? Are you, and if so, like when did that become? Because people struggle with that a lot.
Are
And then, I mean,
you gonna give me some feedback?
well, no, even with you have way more episodes and stuff than me,
Mm.
so I'm not. But even because if you really think about feedback, if you were to like really break it down, you're trying to tell someone what to do
Yeah.
or how to do something different, but you don't really know them. You see what I'm saying? Like it's kind of ironic, but we tell people like be open to feedback, be open to growth. So it's like, are you trying to tell them who you want them to be? Or are you trying to get them to grow, to think on their own? It's very interesting to me when you really break it down.
Feedback to me is interesting for a couple of reasons. First is, in my opinion, obviously depending on the situation, but in a lot of situations, the type of feedback that is the most helpful is the one that you are trying to give to someone else. Because
Hmm.
it's most times the feedback you are needing yourself, and it just
Yeah.
happens to be so that someone else happens to be that outlet through which you can express whatever it is. Like both of our cases, putting together events. I'm sure we could tell plenty of people in order to go get sponsorships, go connect with X, Y, and Z people. But in even saying those things, I'm thinking to myself, that's exactly what I should be doing,
I should be doing the same thing.
right? Like I'm telling this to someone else. And so I found that in giving feedback, it's easier to say things than to do them.
Yeah.
And B, receiving feedback, I would say for me, having the ability to be coachable has always been a strength of mine
Mm.
ever since I could remember. Now, do I implement everything that's said? No.
Depends on who it is, I think, too. I think that
That
goes
too
without
depends on who it is, depends on how much trust I have with them,
saying. Yeah.
depends on what I think their intention is for giving me
Yeah.
that feedback,
Yeah.
and whether or not they truly want me to succeed and move forward and progress, or is that just like a personal thing that they're wanting to get off their
Hmm.
chest? So that's the first thing. The other thing that I'm realizing as part of this when it comes to feedback, character feedback is much harder to accept.
Hmm. Yeah. If it's a job, I'm
Like
telling you, you
you
got
need
to
to
turn
be
that
more
wrench
authentic,
better.
or you need to
Yeah.
be more confident. You need to be more
Hmm.
courageous. Anything that is truly to the core of my character, I'm finding that it's harder to accept than
I
some of the
agree.
other things. Because then that's literally going to the core of who you are.
Hmm.
If someone were to tell you that, hey, adjust the background or whatever, adjust your microphone, whatever it might be, that's like, okay, done.
Hmm.
If someone tells you to change elements of yourself, that I think requires a deeper reflection
Yeah.
or
And
an
we kind of get into
introspection.
that you don't know me mentality with that.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. It's
for
true.
me, that part is a little bit more challenging than I would say other elements of feedback.
It's kind of ironic you say that because I was just giving feedback the other day and I was like, yeah, you got to work on asking more open-ended questions, kind of matter of fact to the point. And they're like, okay, I can
Yeah,
agree with that. But then if I were to tell someone like, be more you, then they're like, okay, well, I mean, it's hard you get a lot more pushback with that piece because it's more of a character piece.
yeah.
I agree with you on that.
And I think that's where, as you said earlier, like I feel like there's a line.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between me coming into your world and saying this is what you have to do, or this is what I don't like about who you are, and you
Hmm.
have to change it. And I think there's a line where you could recognize the different things that may not align with who you are. So I think if anything, it all goes back to a choice of words. Like I could come in and say, "Hey, Bodhi, can you change your shirt?" Or we could strike a conversation about how maybe yellow is not our favorite color,
Hmm.
right? Two very different conversations. One is more of a personal attack, the other one is just an acknowledgement that may get you thinking about certain things that I like or don't like. But then at the same time, it's like you have a choice in that, right?
Yeah.
And if you feel like you are fully authentic in that shirt or whatever it is, then I mean that's my journey to go on.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing that I have to live with, because that's the other thing that I'm realizing as part of this journey. And I don't know how it is for you, but it's almost like every day I have to choose wisely as far as the battles that I want to be a part of. You know, like I can't change
Yeah.
everyone according to how I would want to see the world. And so I'm finding as part of that journey, I just have to accept certain things for what they are. Like I can't change the traffic going down my street to tomorrow go the other way,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to accept that as what it is. I can't change the fact that my neighbor after trash day may leave the trash can there for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. I don't know
I
who
might
does that
remind them,
either.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, can I physically make them bring the trash can in? No. So I'm realizing some of those things that, like, part of the authenticity component, I think, is also realizing what I can and can't change, or what I can and can't influence, not change.
Have you ever had authenticity misconstrued with being selfish?
I think so. Um, I would say, if anything, working in a space of a nonprofit, I think it's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life. A, because it had to start, at least in my eyes, it had to start with my personal story,
Yeah.
because there was no one else's story to tell but my own at the beginning. And then from there, it grew into other stories and other people's perspectives. But part of it, I realized, because there were so many different components in building that business, one of the components is being able to ask for money, ask for donations. First, I wasn't selling a product. If anything, I was giving an opportunity for people to share their story through a platform. And so, because people weren't able to see a tangible result, so to speak, tangible product, I felt that it was more of a challenge for me to be able to accomplish some of those things. And then at the very beginning, I didn't feel comfortable in asking, especially for money. I
Because it
never
would
had to
come
do that
off
in my life.
selfish. Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
had to do that in my life ever. My previous jobs prior to this were all something along the lines of sales. I give you this, you give me that. There was an equal exchange. This, it's you give me this, and I give you a vision for
Yeah.
what I could do with it. And some people don't choose to understand. Some people don't give you the time to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm not going to say my authenticity was compromised, because I think I've always found a way to remain authentic through the whole process. I can also tell you that there have been times where, let's say, a person wants to help, but I just don't feel like it's for the right reason, and I don't choose to accept the help.
Mm.
Whenever I'm in situations where I feel like the person wants to help, but it's entirely based for their personal gain, it doesn't align with me.
Yeah.
So I don't choose to accept it, because then I feel like I'm not compromising my own authenticity. I mean, probably same thing is true with podcasts. Think about it. A
Yeah.
lot of the people, and I don't know how many people actually would know this, besides the two of us and however many other creators are there who are willing to disclose this. A lot of the conversations we have with people are first time encounters. Many of them are one and done. So think about that. With those two things, those are two huge obstacles
Yeah.
you have to overcome in order to have a quality conversation. Like
Yeah.
you meeting them for the first time ever,
Mm-hmm.
and possibly the only time through Zoom, and then you immediately got to get into a dialogue through which you can have a authentic conversation. The reason why people like Joe Rogan and so many others appear so natural is because they spend a whole day, sometimes days,
with them.
with an individual.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I learned from the shadows was the first couple of episodes I had, with the exception of Joe Bogman, because I've known him for a while. And
Yeah.
the first couple of episodes that I had, you're right. It was a one and done. And you were like, there were certain ones where I'm like, okay, I really can. I'm a people person anyways. I feel like I can start talking to someone and, hey, we're best friends. We met 5 minutes ago. But the first couple, it was probably the first dozen or so. A lot of them were one-offs, and
Same
I
way.
would finish. Yeah, you finish, and you're like, okay, that's not a bad episode. I mean, we got some nuggets out of there. But then it got to the point where now, honestly, if I don't know someone, I won't record until we do a pre-interview, a pre-phone call. There's someone I got. There's a couple people that I got, but like one I have coming up. I read his book, Built to Fail, story of Blockbuster, Alan Payne, and sent him a message. I was like, hey, I read your book, interested in coming on the show. We had like a 1 hour phone call the other day. And if I just would have hopped on and hit record with him, I don't think it would have been that great. But we started talking about basketball. We started talking about, the business structure of, just his book. We started to talk about so many different things. And I was like, all right, this was good. This was really good. Now we're going to have a better episode because we were transparent with each other on that conversation. And, even someone else the other day that I talked to, tears. We had tears sitting there talking to each other on the phone, and we haven't even scheduled an episode yet.
It wasn't over the Tar Heels loss, was it?
Oleg, look, I was trying to be nice to be on here. And
Hey, I was rooting for them to win.
Oleg,
I was rooting for them to win.
They beat Duke. That's all that matters to me. But yeah,
I won my bracket after that win. Actually, when they beat Duke.
That's You mentioned the national champ. Way to take the air out of the episode. There. But no, like I was, we're having tears talking to him. But even like, it does make you think though, because like these podcasts, we do like one episode, and especially topics like we have, they go really deep. Like it requires you.
These are some of the most personal conversations you'll have.
And I think it has to do with, can they sniff out your authenticity? And I've never one time, this is the only time I'll probably ever say this, but like I've never talked about my reviews for the podcast ever. And I don't flash them up on Instagram or any of that stuff. But a lot of the reviews they have authenticity thrown in there, real. And that's why they were able to share their stories. And I got on a little roll there where people were like, I've never said this to anybody before. I've never shared this on another podcast before. Then afterwards, they were like, wow, I felt like I could really open up and talk to you. And that was really cool for me. But, I'll even take like the classes that we teach. 2 classes ago, it started talking, and, I told them, I was like, make it real when y'all are in here with each other. Like y'all go out, do stuff with each other, go eat, hang out with each other, play Uno, do whatever. But like y'all gel, y'all get to know each other. And they started to tell conversations during these lessons they're teaching. And then they're not just laughing, they're not just thinking, but like they're crying. And they're opening up and sharing real stuff with each other. I'm on my 3rd straight class where, this class said today during feedbacks, they were like, yeah, you told us that other classes like cried and opened up and showed them their true selves during these conversations. And I was one of those like, okay, whatever. But next thing I know, a week later, we're doing it. And that's crazy. Like how enjoyable their experience was, because it wasn't that selfishness of like, hey, we're all here to win awards. We're here for our own thing. We came together, we worked together, we were authentic together. And it made for an enjoyable experience. Someone told me during our little presentation thing the other day, they said best 4 weeks of my life that I've experienced with all of y'all. And that's really cool to hear that, because
Yeah,
they were real with each other. They were open, that openness.
unique. Going
Yeah.
back to Melody's point, who's joined us here, she says you have to embrace your uniqueness and just share who you are. You will know if they resonate with you. I think that's true.
That's
I
very
think that's
true.
very
Well,
spot on.
so I'm not sure if you, Oleg, were able to check out the newest Llama Lounge episode, Bumper Sticker Leadership.
Mm.
Joe Bogdan had a phenomenal guest. But he and that individual, myself, we one of the things we talked about was
I was gonna
vulnerability
ask
and
who the guest was.
yeah, yeah,
I
vulnerability
love
and
it.
transparency. And we were talking about how um, you it's almost like a turnoff when you meet someone, or if you see someone on social media and you're like, mm, they're not, to quote Melody, they're not embracing their uniqueness, and they're they're almost putting on this mask in front of
Yeah,
everybody, and acting like there's someone else. And to me, I think the more self-aware I've been as of late, you sniff that out and you see it, and it's just,
I
you
agree.
almost don't even want to associate with people like that. That you probably know the type that I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You see it from a mile away,
yeah.
and they'll swear to you all day long they're authentic, they're genuine. But yeah, I think for me that's one thing that's really been sticking out a lot, especially with this topic.
How do you maintain a lot of your relationships? Do you struggle with that?
No, no, actually I don't. Um, I do if they are that type of personality.
Uh huh.
Um, if I've had them if I've encountered in my career and they're that type, if that selfishness kind of rears its head, it's hard for me to. Um, but when I feel like someone's truly authentic, like
Yeah.
especially with the podcast, it's easy because I honestly do keep in contact with a lot of my guests, a lot of my
Really.
guests. I really do. And
So you take the time and the energy to handpick each one individual. Like you'll research, you'll read people's books before
mhm.
reaching out to them.
Yep. And I'll reach out to them, and we'll usually have like a pre-conversation on the phone, or we'll hop on Zoom, and we'll talk. And because my podcast requires you to be transparent and
Yeah.
vulnerable and authentic, and like I said, if they come on and they're not, and it's just it doesn't go over well. So I think taking it to that level and not just getting on there and saying, well, let's talk about uh, you know, talk about let's talk about splitting atoms. Right.
Sure.
You're not going to get on a really deep level there with that person. But whenever we get on it, it's like, tell me about your childhood. Well, this happened to me. And how did you react to that? Like, how did that
Yeah.
impact you later in life? Talk to me about this tragedy you suffered. You almost take it to another level. So then it creates that little bit of bond. So there are a lot of my guests. I would honestly say 3/4 of my guests I probably still keep in contact with. Um,
Really.
yeah, just because of
That's
that.
huge, man.
Yeah, because of that connection. And then the one thing I think that I'm even more proud of is the students that I've taught.
Yeah.
Some way, shape, or form, I keep in contact with majority of them as well, because it's you take it to that deeper level by getting to see like their true side and things they've been through, and that openness. It's when we put on facades, it's where it's hard to really maintain that. That's kind of a oh, okay. Yeah, I call it drive-through relationships, where it's kind of one and dones, and then the dine-ins. And I have a lot of the dine-in relationships in my life, and yeah, it's just, I mean, randomly I'll hit someone up, or someone will reach out to me with a message, and it's not another, hey, let's do another podcast. It's just, how's this going on in your life? What's going on here? How's this going for you?
I was gonna say, like, who initiates the contact? Is it you or is it them?
Initially,
Yeah, or throughout.
for the most part, me. I think
Yeah.
later on, like especially like most recently, I've had a lot more
How do you
people.
know when to get in touch with someone? Do you have like a spreadsheet, or like how do you, or is it just all in your head?
I'm a one man shop. That Excel sheet and this planner over here is how I do all that. But I was reaching out to people, but now people will reach out to me, and there have been people that I've connected with as of late, and we've
Yeah.
had conversations, and I'm like, I'm not feeling it. It just seems like it's selfish. Like when someone gets on and they just rant and rave
Mm,
and not really asking about, it's not like well, tell me about you. Let me hear about you. It's more of a, I've done this, I've done, and it's hard for me to really connect with that type of person. But yeah, for follow-ups, it goes two ways. Sometimes they'll reach out to me, sometimes I'll reach out to them. But it's cool to see that, because you've got that connection when you get a message and it's, hey, happy birthday, even happy birthdays from guests that I never thought I would be keeping in contact with. It's the craziest thing.
yeah. So tell me about you. How are you? I'm just kidding. No, I find myself to be in similar situations sometimes,
Yeah.
or the topic would go into how's the weather. When I don't blame the individual. Like we all have an iPhone, we can all check the temperature, but
Yeah.
it's just I think it's probably a level of discomfort in wanting to go deep or not knowing where to start and having to transition to some of these other topics. For me, when it comes to the relationships, and the only reason why I was asking you is because I was genuinely curious in how you do it, because I used to find that to be a challenge
Yeah.
because I was connected to so many different people. Now I'm finding that my circle has become smaller because now I can focus on the quality. Now I
Mhm.
can focus on the individual that wants to be a part of my life. How do I know that who that individual is? Someone who chooses to reach out without me having to reach out 10 to 15 to 20 times
It's
before I get a
true.
call back. I
Yeah.
think if anything, what I've learned and continuing to learn from that is effort does matter at a certain point.
Yeah.
Like I can't be the only one that's picking up the phone. That's why I asked you the question, who initiates the contact? There were so many times throughout my life, as I'm sure I was that individual for someone else, where I was the one that was initiating the contact. I was the
Mhm.
one that was wanting to be a part of their lives, as I'm sure other people were doing it for me and then not getting a response from me. So I think if anything, we probably all do it to each other
Mhm.
at one point or another. I mean, think about the number of people you're connected with or to and that you neglect due to lack of time. I know I do for a fact. Right now, this is an hour that we can't get back.
Mhm.
That's an hour that I could have called someone.
It's an hour of magic. That's what it was.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but seriously,
Yeah. It
like
would,
so
and
much
that's
could
the
happen in
time.
that hour.
Yeah, time's
Um,
a big part of it. And there are sometimes where, I mean, even I'm guilty of it with you and Scott. People will send me a
yes.
message, and it's not that I'm not responding. It's just I'm driving down the road, checking my message real quick, and I'm like, oh, Oleg sent me a message. I'll respond to it when I get back home. But then
Yeah.
something else happens. But I think what you were saying about that, you don't want to be the person to reach out to them 5 or 6. I think that goes back to authenticity at a young age, when it's,
Mhm.
you open up to someone and you get spurned or you get hurt, and then it's like, ooh, next time that situation occurs, I don't know if I'm going to do the same thing. I don't know if I'm going to give them my authentic self. I mean, you go on a date. What, are we really authentic on our first date? Do we say like,
No, probably not, because I think we fall back to more like traditional phrases. I mean, even think about how we meet a lot of the people now, if we're being quote unquote authentic about the process.
yeah, do you like such
Dating
and such?
apps,
I love that. No, you don't.
you know,
Yeah.
dating apps, how we start conversations there,
Yes. Yeah.
who we talk to, how much we aspire to meet that right person on there. When you know for a fact that life has taught you a different method. Now, for some people, the dating apps might have worked perfectly. I know plenty of people who met their wives of dating apps.
God,
I
what's the
know
last?
quite a few people.
I think the
Now,
last
for
dating app I
me,
used was
like,
MySpace.
yeah, and for me, they don't really work because I've met all the people in person.
Yeah.
Like, I've chosen to go out wherever to meet the individual. So for me, it's like I just feel like I'm going to use up more time and energy going through the small talk before we can get to a topic of conversation that actually is somewhat relevant to possibly meeting that individual in person and creating an experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm not saying they don't work. Once again, I know plenty of people who have been married and are happily married due to things like that. But I'm just saying that there are, I think, if anything, what I'm learning through this conversation as well as however many others, you have to find your own authentic approach and you
And
have
you
to
got
stick to it.
and you got to find your own authentic self.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of time. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
every chapter is probably going to require a different self, right?
and then like who shaped us? Who shaped us?
And who's continuing to shape us.
Yeah, I think like the more we talk about it, I think we're solving world problems right now. I think you know, I think
No, but we are to a degree.
I don't think I think if we think that we're going to discover our authentic self in, if I pick up this book or if I listen to this podcast or if I go to this retreat and I'm going to discover my authentic self, I think you'll discover elements of your
Yes.
authentic self. I think you're, not to sound morbid, but I think, some people live their lives and never really truly discover things about themselves. And what do most people do when they know, I hate to say it this way, but they find out they have an illness?
Yeah.
What do a lot of people start doing? Bucket list. I got to jump out of a plane. I got to do this. I got to challenge myself.
Yeah.
And because they're really trying to figure out, like, who am I? I've always been afraid to do this. I haven't wanted to do this.
Yeah.
But I think you just got to get out there and live and try new things and really, like, not be afraid to fail. You're going to fail at a lot. We all think we're perfect, or we strive to be perfect, but no one's ever going to be near it. But you got to get out there and fail and learn new things and try things and meet new people and get rejected and make key connections. And I think there will come a point in time where we slow down in our lives and we look back and we're like, I think I know who I am now. I think I
Yeah.
know who my true authentic self is.
Yeah. There is a guy, I'm looking him up right now. I was talking to you about different YouTubers that are similar in this space. So one guy, I came across his story. Damn, what is his name? Jimmy something Donaldson, I think. Runs a channel called Mr. Beast, and it's a really interesting concept. They do a variety of different things, but part of it is also like philanthropy and things like that, where they just give away like houses, cars, cash, whatever it is. And to me, what was really interesting about it was the level to which an individual is able to explore his own authenticity.
Mm.
Like literally no F's given, just does whatever he wants as long as it's in alignment with him and his own mission, but is willing to try it. And there was one video I was watching, it was him. There's another he's another famous guy on YouTube. You probably know his name. Chase something.
Mm-mm.
Or Nate. Anyways, so this guy, it was just a brief exchange between the two of them, and he said something that was very profound to me, and he said, "You just have to do it. It's the only way you're gonna find it."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was so profound because it's like it's the only way you're gonna find your authentic self. You just have to try it.
Yeah.
You won't find it reading a book. You may find things to resonate with, but you'll never be able to connect to your true self unless you see it in action.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you see that moment. This is my experience again. When I saw the moments where I would do the fake laugh and afterwards reflecting, like, why did I do that? Or I would do the fake handshake or the fake hug or whatever,
The
right?
fake wave to somebody, yeah.
Yeah, like you know for a fact that's not fully you, but
Mm-hmm.
you did it for whatever reason to create a persona. And I'm finding that in those moments, it's like the only way to do it is just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to give it a shot. And whatever comes with it, that's what comes with it.
Be
I
labeled
mean,
as
you can't
difficult.
control it. You
Be
don't know what's
labeled
going
as
to come,
different.
right?
Yeah.
You're going to be labeled as different. Your circle may change, but
Yeah.
I'm finding it's like if I really want to get to this next phase of it, this is the only way I can do this.
And you do that, nobody's gonna say you're unauthentic. They're just gonna be like, that's it's almost like when someone goes like, well, that's just Trip. That's just Oleg. This is how they are. I think that's a better thing for someone to say than, "Oh, he's so
Yeah,
selfish." Yeah. Or he's so
yeah,
he kisses butt or he's a brown noser. I think that's better just to be like, it's just Oleg. He's gonna
yeah,
ask those questions. He's gonna be like that. He's not always gonna agree with you.
yeah. Bodhi, where can people find out more about the Authentic Shadows podcast?
Yeah, the Shadows Podcast. Head over to theshadowspodcast.com. Check us out. Uh, I mean, basically, what we've been talking about here, our guests come on, they're their true, authentic selves. They share not just their glory moments, they share those, but they talk about all the stuff that leads up to it. They talk about the trials and tribulations they've had to occur in their lives. Oleg's been on there, had
Mm-hmm.
some phenomenal guests. I've been so fortunate to have some great people share that time, like you said, that we can't get back with us on there. Go check it out. We got something for everybody in terms of athletes, authors, CEOs, military members, just regular everyday people. Everybody's got a story at the Shadows, and we actually have July 7th will be season 2 of Rise from the Shadows, and our theme is Behind the Mask, where we're going to focus on
Mm.
the emotional, social, spiritual, and physical domains of our wellness and how we can take that mask off and really work on our true selves. So yeah, theshadowspodcast.com. Go check us out and let me know what you think. Give me feedback. I'm very open to that. But
Are you also putting together an event?
yeah, we're
Is that
well we're
open to the public, by the way? Are those?
so it's a military event, but
Oh, okay.
I am not going to be representing the military. I will not be in uniform, but I will also I'm running
You'll be the civilian.
I'm running the development piece for
Uh-huh.
the professional military educators, but then I will do my best Clark Kent, take my uniform off, rock my civvies, and be doing the Shadows podcast down in San Antonio later on this summer. But yeah, I'm super stoked about that. So it's pretty cool. But tell them everything about you, Ollie.
For me, it's through Overcoming Odds. That's where people can find the podcast. The other thing that I wanted to briefly mention is an event we're going to be putting together in September called Survive to Thrive, Face Your Fears in Austin, Texas. Scott Mason's actually going to be one of the speakers.
That's
And
awesome.
and Casey Berman, Les Brown, Nancy John, and I'm trying to think who else from the group of people that we know. I think those are the only ones.
It's a
Oh, Steve Gamlin.
star-studded group.
Yeah, Steve Gamlin and a couple others. So I'm really looking
Jeez,
forward to it.
when is
Um,
this?
September 23rd through 25th, 3 day,
Yeah,
all about helping people identify their fears, turn them into strengths, a series of workshops, series of breakout sessions. So I'm excited because it's pushing me, it's pushing us as an organization
yeah,
to take this next step forward. A lot of these people, like Les Brown, I've looked up to for many, many years. So meeting him in person and being able to share that space with him, it's going to be something. Talk about a moment of authenticity. That's it's as real as it gets.
yeah.
That's what I'm realizing, a part of it. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm excited for the fact that all of us can partner together and make this thing happen. And if anything, I'm also excited about. So part of the reasons why this show exists is because of Spectrum Designs, and this is organization that really believed in us at the very beginning. When Scott and I was first starting, or maybe a year or so in, there was a guy named Patrick Bardsley, who's their CEO. He's been able to literally organize a lot of the mission that they've had and believed in us, and we believed in them ever since. So I wanted to briefly play this clip for anyone that's watching right now that shares a little bit more about their vision and mission. But before I do that, Bodhi, I just want to thank you. Thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for just bringing your, as cliche as it might sound, authentic self. Every conversation I have with you,
Yeah.
I haven't had one of those with the fake laugh yet.
Th- Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. This was awesome to be on here. I
Of
appreciate it.
course.
Anytime.